The House of Representatives condemns China for their very peaceful civilian weather balloon. It was not even close. Unanimous vote, 419-0. Not often we see that in this country. Let's watch it count down and the votes finally be tallied. You'll see at the top it says condemning Chinese spy balloon. 2/3 of the majority are needed for that. They got that no problem. We had 15 people not voting, 419 voting yeah. When we were watching this morning, we saw actually there was one nay that popped up. It was very funny. And then the nay conveniently floated back into the yay section. And we don't know if that was just a little clerical error there or somebody, actually voted nay before voting yay. We'll see. This is what it looked like as the votes came in.
Yep. Gavel or no? On this vote, the yeas are 419, the nays are 0. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
China, you are condemned. Whack, right? That's what you get. Don't send your garbage spy balloon trash into our airspace. So the House is unhappy about it, not even close. I want to play some of the arguments before we actually read the resolution so we can see what they are talking about, because this is not this is not where it ends. Right? This is kind of the opening salvo on this whole saga. And we see that this representative from California, her name is Young Kim. She came out and she was explaining that, yeah, China was a big threat. They absolutely should be condemned. And she's also turning her attention over to TikTok, right? One spy balloon flying over the United States caused a lot of eyeballs to pay attention to this big issue. But it's not the end of the story. They've also got 100 million eyeballs through cell phone applications called TikTok.
On the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I rise in strong support of this resolution condemning the Chinese Communist Party's use of high-altitude surveillance balloon over U.S. territory as a brazen violation of U.S. sovereignty and international norms. The balloon has been shot down, and I thank those who bravely completed the mission. However, many questions remain, and intelligence reports show what we all knew. This was neither a coincidence nor something to be taken lightly. This surveillance balloon was part of a larger program by the CCP that has collected information on military assets in Indo-Pacific countries like Taiwan, Japan, India, and the Philippines.
One part of much bigger
We all know
operation.
that this balloon does not even scratch the surface of the CCP's surveillance capabilities. Millions of Americans are spied upon every single day through TikTok and other state-affiliated applications and technologies. Whether in airspace or cyberspace, we cannot allow the CCP to spy on us. We cannot allow the CCP to threaten our way of life and the American dream. The time to project strength is now. We must defend our airspace, send a strong signal to the CCP that this behavior will not be tolerated, and equip our allies with the tools they need to deter and defend against CCP's aggression. As Indo-Pacific Subcommittee Chair, I'm committed to getting answers from the Biden administration about when they knew the CCP's balloon was entering the U.S. airspace, what they know about the CCP balloon program, and we need to ensure the United States responds to this type of aggression with strong, decisive action from our leaders. Thank you, and I yield back.
Representative Young Kim, she's a Republican out of California. There are evidently some still out there, which is pretty amazing. But unequivocal on that one, says that this was a serious threat. TikTok is a serious threat. This is just the beginning. There's a lot more to focus on, but she is happy that the balloon is no longer there and that it has been taken out. We'll see what comes next. We also have a short clip from Sheila Jackson Lee. Now, she's a Democrat out of Texas. So we had a Republican out of California. We also have a Democrat out of Texas. And we've heard a lot from Miss Jackson Lee. She usually has some very spicy takes. But here, interestingly, she was in alignment. She agrees basically with all the Republicans. This was unanimous. There are no dissenters on this.
I thank the ranking member, thank the managers of this bill. This was no weather balloon.
That's right.
This was a spy balloon. And let me be very clear. Members of both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, are standing before the American people and recognizing that this resolution of the Chinese Communist Party's actions are appropriate, and we should, as Americans, denounce their actions.
We should.
But let me be very clear as well. I want to congratulate the United States military, intelligence officials, and others who effectively took the commander-in-chief's order that occurred on February 1st to shoot it down, and they handled themselves with the greatest amount of appropriateness to ensure that the American people were safe, to contain the threat, and to do their job. It serves no purpose to suggest that the commander-in-chief, President Joe Biden, failed the American people or did anything wrong.
What? Yes, it does. Doesn't it serve the purpose of making sure that if he did something wrong, he doesn't do it again? Like, for example, one criticism would have been, maybe he shouldn't have let it float through the entire continental U.S. Maybe it should have been taken out the moment it crossed into international airspace up in Alaska before it entered our airspace, including Alaska. So we do actually hold people accountable for their decisions and their actions. That's part of governance, isn't it? Now, she doesn't want you to do that because it hurts her side, but doesn't mean it's not a good reason.
Interestingly enough, in the midst of the spy balloon, over 70% of the American people believe that Joe Biden took to the podium in the State of the Union and gave them enough comfort that the State of the Union is well. Our souls are strong, and the American people are strong.
I saw those polls. I saw there was some poll from some organization that said 70% of Republicans were really thrilled with his speech. I just started laughing. Ridiculous.
So, yes, as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, I am keenly aware and concerned about this nation's national security. Keenly aware of the time frame in which this spy balloon came into our eyesight. With that in mind, even as it traversed the United States, I can assure you, in spite of the chronicling of the facts here, that General Austin, Department of Defense, and others that were responsible for our safety pursuant to the direction of the Commander-in-Chief followed this spy balloon and were able to handle its appropriateness in the course of shooting it down.
We're going to see about that because we have several different guests coming up here later who were interviewed by the Appropriations Committee, by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and others who all give us more details about this. And I think you're going to find that a lot of the other Congress people don't think it was handled so appropriately, don't like that it was allowed to float up there for so long, including the people in many of those border states called Alaska, Montana, Maine, North Dakota, and elsewhere.
And finally, let me say, it is important that we use this as a condemnation of the Chinese Communist Party. Let us not use this to intimidate Chinese Americans or to be able to create atmospheres of hate. I denounce that.
Nobody's
and I
saying
denounce
that.
SB 147 in the state of Texas that wants to stop Chinese Americans from buying property. That is not the American way. What is the American way is to stand as Democrats and Republicans and others and members of Congress to take our full responsibility alongside of the executive to ensure your national security. We have done that.
Well, nobody's saying to go and hate Chinese people or anything like that. I don't know what that bill's about in Texas, but I don't know where that came up.
We have the facts. We know the traversing. And I can assure you that the Chinese Americans have not engaged themselves in this activity and should not be condemned. And the Chinese Communist Party is aware of the strength of the people of the United States and their defense. I yield back.
Yeah, nobody's saying that the Chinese Americans were flying the balloon. That never came up at all. And so a very great question came in from our friend Chris Wolney. The question, of course, which is exactly where we're going next, is about this. What fool would vote nay to condemn the spy balloon? It's a good question, Chris. We saw that earlier in the day, and I don't know if it was an accident, clerical error, just pressed the wrong button, got fat thumbs or something, but it got reversed back. And we were joking about this. Is this something that he actually did want to vote nay, but then he voted nay and goes, oh crap, nobody's voting with me, and then got shoved back into the majority. Good question. But the question you're also asking is about what does this do? What does this mean? Is it all just kabuki theater? Is it all just a big joke? Why is this even necessary? Is it just a bunch of Congress people who just want to make a vote, make a speech, make a statement so that they feel better about themselves? Well, let's find out. Let's go over to the House resolution itself, because, you might suspect that this could just be the opening salvo. You could say this is the condemnation. We're also going to be subpoenaing stuff. We're also going to ask if anybody else knew about this. Was anybody complicit in this? Did anybody, whatever, wherever the investigation may go, maybe it leads to criminal charges. Somebody gets prosecuted. Maybe we get something out of it, but we got to ask ourselves what the resolution allows in the first place. So here's what we've got. House resolution approved by Michael T. McCall, United States House of Representatives representative. The HR is the following: condemning the Chinese Communist Party's use of high-altitude surveillance balloons over the United Territory as a brazen violation of U.S. sovereignty. Here's the resolution. This is what it says. Paragraph 1. Condemning. Probably loudly and hard, right? Condemning the Chinese Communist Party, their use of high-altitude balloon as a brazen violation of sovereignty. Whereas they say on February 2nd, the DOD publicly announced it was tracking the balloon belonging to the PRC. They say we also acknowledge that the North American NORAD began tracking it back on January 28th. This is kind of an official finding of the U.S. government, right? Yeah, it's a condemnation, but this is an official finding. The Chinese people, the Chinese government, the CCP over there, they're reading all of this just like we are. They're watching all of these hearings. They're watching all of these Congress people get up and testify. They're saying, oh, all right, well, I wonder what's coming next. A declaration of something? We'll see. They say, whereas the Secretary of Defense has stated that the balloon was being used by the PRC in an attempt to surveil strategic sites in the continental U.S., they say, whereas the surveillance balloon traveled near sensitive U.S. national security facilities, including the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. We're going to hear from Senator Tester soon. Whereas on February 4th, a U.S. aircraft shot down the balloon off the coast of South Carolina. Whereas the CCP, Communist Party, their intelligence collection directed against the U.S. poses a threat to the U.S. They say while the PRC has a long history of intelligence collections against the U.S., reports of its espionage have risen significantly in recent years. The CCP attempted to spread false claims about the nature and the purpose of the surveillance balloon. They falsely claimed that it was a weather balloon that simply veered off course due to force majeure. On February 3rd, the Secretary of State postponed his planned trip to the PRC and referred to the balloon incident as an irresponsible act and a clear violation of sovereignty that undermined the purpose of the trip. They say that the International Civil Aviation Convention, Article 1, also known as the Chicago Convention, states that every state has complete and exclusive sovereignty over airspace above its territory. Don't fly your balloons here. Although the PRC surveillance balloons have previously violated our airspace, they say this incident differs from those prior violations due to length of time the balloon spent over the U.S. territory. All right, so even every Democrat is now on record saying that, yeah, what happened with Trump, even if you say that those were balloon infractions with Trump, they weren't really balloon infractions like this one. All right, so that argument is sort of in the garbage. Whereas it is in the United States national security interest to deter foreign adversaries from engaging in intelligence collection, it is therefore resolved in the United States House of Representatives. This is the next question. So what? All right, China did all this. The United States did all this. This is all the facts. We see a lot of this like in lawsuits. So-and-so did this, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did this. Therefore, count 1, murder. Count 2, assault. Count 3, right? So now all of that being established. 1, Congress now, this is a finding, almost like an indictment. Congress condemns the PRC's brazen violation of U.S. sovereignty, denounces the CCP's efforts to deceive the international community through false claims about its intelligence collection campaigns in violation of our sovereignty, Number 3, Congress determines that it should be the policy of the United States to promptly and decisively act to prevent foreign aerial surveillance and their platforms, including those connected to the CCP, from violating our sovereignty. Right? Congress is saying this is not going to happen again. 4, calls on the Biden administration to continue to keep Congress apprised with comprehensive briefings on this incident, including a complete account of all known infiltrations by the Chinese over the past several years, a complete account of past similar incidents of balloons around the world, timeline of events for the most recent infiltration leading to the eventual shoot down of the balloon, an assessment of what surveillance data the PRC was able to transmit while the balloon was here, what were they able to beam on home, a detailed account of what measures were taken to mitigate the intelligence collection threat. We're going to get into a lot of that in the Senate. They may have been able to stop all of the data. Can't really tell. They don't tell us, but we'll see. The cost of those measures and the impact on the regular operations of the affected installations, the different silos. They also want a description of what options were identified and made available to Joe. A detailed account of all diplomatic communications between the U.S. State Department and China, a detailed description of plans, capabilities, methods to deter and defeat any intelligence collection activities conducted by the PRC in the national airspace, and what Congress needs to know to detect and defeat those activities in the future. All right, so that's, there's some substance there. I would say that there is actually some substance there. They want to dig in, get more records, right? It's a real kind of hard demand. And, whether the White House, whether the military works with them or not, I think it's sort of relative to the opposition in Congress. So right now, there is no opposition in Congress to any of this. This was a unanimous vote, right? Everybody in Congress wants all of these things, presumably. So the Biden administration and everybody that we're going to hear from, they're all kind of playing ball on this. There's something weird going on. There's not a lot of fighting in these hearings. All the senators are pissed. All the House representatives are pissed. Everybody's unhappy. And it kind of doesn't happen like that in our government all that often. So that is exactly what we saw in the House resolution. The U.S. House of Representatives condemns China. And of course, we'll turn over to the Senate and continue to cover. Hope you follow as we do.